Guys, in case you can't tell, I have literally just landed back in Sydney, come straight to the buy round to record this message, and what I would give for a body protection like NordVPN. Maybe the hair wouldn't be all over the place, the clothes feeling dirty, but thankfully, thanks to NordVPN, I don't have these issues with my technology, my tablet, my phone, my laptop when I am overseas and traveling abroad. What a lifesaver it is when you are overseas and you are dealing with banking issues here in Australia. Maybe you want to watch a bit of NRL. We know the Pacific Championships are on. Well, all I needed to do, bang my NordVPN on, switch my location to Australia, especially for banking, but you know, I do like my rugby league as well. So that was super important. You know, these dodgy cafe Wi-Fis, the hotel Wi-Fis, can they be trusted? Well, NordVPN takes care of all that for you. At NordVPN, they do go above and beyond. You get protection on up to 10 devices. I mean, I don't know quite who needs that. Maybe you share it around with a few friends or family. If you're an individual that's got 10 devices that need protecting, then I've got some questions for you, my friend. Also, little trick for those of you looking at doing some traveling, get on NordVPN, switch your location, check out those compare websites for flights, trains, hotels. You might just save a few quid, dollars, whatever, lira, because I know I just did. I can hear some of you saying now, Jimmy, I live in my little bubble here in Australia. Don't really like to venture too far. You know, maybe one bridge in Sydney, two bridges in Sydney. Definitely not going over to England. Why would I want to go there? It's freezing. I don't know. I don't need a VPN. Well, maybe you do, because it's also got threat protection, blocking viruses, dodgy websites before they get near you, premium cyber security for basically the cost of a cup of coffee a month. Honestly, if you travel or on public Wi-Fi, it is a no-brainer. So to get the very best discount off your NordVPN plan, go to nordvpn.com/JamesGraham. Our link will also give you 4 free months on the 2-year plan. There is no risk with NordVPN's 30-day money-back guarantee. Our link is in the podcast notes below. Hello and welcome everybody to episode 7 of the Rugby League Roundtable. I am joined, as always, by Anthony Seibold, Matt Cameron and Buzz Rothfield. Today, gents, first of all, thank you for putting on some different clothes for episode 7. It is very refreshing to see you in some different gear. I've stayed the same, bit stinky, but that's okay. We're talking R360. Couldn't be any better timing. Buzz, I'm going to come to you first. When did you first hear whispers of this rebel competition?
Oh, probably 6 months ago, Jimmy. Some stories, began appearing in the media. No one knew whether to take it all that seriously at the start and who was behind it. There were a lot of sort of stories, but no one was prepared to put their name to it, or, there was no official website. And no one was prepared to go on the record and briefing the media. And the stories started coming from player agents. Player agents were the people getting the phone calls from the organisers of the breakaway competition. And that's when it all started. And I guess in the last month particularly, it's gained, particularly strong momentum with Ryan Pappenhausen, Zach Lomax, and doubts about Payne Haas.
Nelson and Sofa Solomon as
Nelson,
well, potentially.
Yeah. Is it a serious threat? I know we're going to go into that in a little while. I'm not convinced it is yet. There's 510 NRL players, 30 at each club, and we've lost 2 officially, Zach Lomax and Ryan Pappenhausen, both of whom were released by their clubs. They didn't break contracts. If those clubs had really wanted to keep them, they would have kept them, but they chose not to. So until we lose a Payne Haas, and hopefully not a Nathan Cleary from Matt's club at Penrith, that's when I think there will be a concern.
Let's jump ahead, and that will be alarm bells ringing, because the moment any big name player is off contract in the next 3 seasons, it is going to come down to whether or not they remain loyal to the game. I think when we look at expansion with teams like Perth Bears and the side in Papua New Guinea coming in, that's obviously going to be an a bidding war you couldn't compete with from a club, but it's not going to be blown out of the water. But Matt, for you, when Nathan is available in 12 months' time, there is the genuine possibility that this R360 competition offer him money that you wouldn't even dream of being able to match from a purely club perspective.
Agree. So the first comment to that is hopefully he won't be available in 12 months' time, because it's my job to get that sorted out in the next 12 months before he becomes a free agent. But as Buzz alluded to, from the CEO's point of view, like Peter and Andrew have been briefing us constantly, I suppose, over the last 8 weeks in particular. Obviously, for them to come out while everyone was in England and make a stance about bans and bans on players and management bans and all those sort of things, I suppose, reflects that it's, and as you said, whether it's real or not, whether it's so hard to tell, because like, where is the funding? Like, show me, where's the funding model? Where's the, like, it's nowhere to be seen at the moment. It's a lot of talk in the background. There's a lot of media reporting. But again, if Peter and Andrew felt the need to come out and take that stance, obviously it's more than just a discussion going on in the background. The fact that two of the players that you've referenced have parted company with their incumbent clubs at the moment adds another layer to it. It's interesting. We've got a CEO Zoom tomorrow, so I'm actually interested in the next part of that conversation. So, but to get back to your point, yeah, like, clearly, we don't want to lose Nathan. It's my job to keep him at the Penrith Panthers, but I think too, like you referenced 510 players. Well, there's only a subset there that this game would appeal to. Did you play? Did you play rugby when you? No. So, surely you would have been a great player, James. I'm not saying that for 1 minute, but there's a group of players that whatever R360 is, it wouldn't appeal to them in any way, shape, or form. So, I feel like the conversation that's going on at the moment, it sounds like it's quite strategic into a subset of players.
Yeah, of course, that is a given, that they would only target a certain select few current NRL players. But just back to a player like Nathan, if R360 doesn't exist, I think you wrap him up, relatively stress free. Just. I'm going to play that game in my head where R360 doesn't exist. I think you wrap him up. But I think with a player like Nathan now, there's maybe a change in thinking, a change in mindset. And not from him, but from this Rebel competition, there's a change in ethics. And they're not bound by the no contact. They are free to go and put an offer to Nathan Cleary or his management team.
Well, he can't deal with his management team, because any manager that involves himself or herself with the organisation is a 10-year ban. So I don't know how he does approach Nathan. There's...
Yeah, that is a genuine risk for the management company. But
and Nathan's representation, like... SFX, they're a large company in our market at the moment. I can't imagine that, George would be putting himself in a position where he was, there was a potential that one deal over here could compromise 30 over here.
I get that, but we all know that there would be a way around that. Like, take the management team out of this. There would be a way to get to Nathan and say, hey, look, this is what we can do. Forget your November 1. This is what we are prepared to pay you. We'll give you some upfront now. And we'll show you we're serious. Like, a lot of the talk is around, well, where's the business plan? Where's the money coming from? What is this private equity? Like, I guess for for people externally, it doesn't really matter. It certainly appears to me like there is some funds there. Whether or not there's the funds to get this competition off the ground, I can't imagine Zach Lomax and Ryan Pappenhausen walking away from deals without some form of financial compensation over and above what they currently are being compensated for by the National Rugby League and their respective football clubs. Pappenhausen was on a reported $1 million a year. You don't walk away from that unless you are being bankrolled. And I think with the worry is for a player like Nathan, who's off contract or available in 12 months, that you would get your head turned. Like it would only be natural.
Yep. Yeah, and I suppose you referenced Buzz PNG. That was a layer, and obviously there's been a lot of commentary around the tax-free status up there. So that was going to create one level of an uneven playing market, I suppose, moving forward. This conversation about R360 potentially creates another one. I'm not a golfer, but like when Live Golf hit our shores, I think there was a lot more guts to it. Like it was very clear where the money was coming from, how the competition would be structured, those sorts of things. Like if I make that comparison, I don't see that with this conversation at the moment. So.
Probably a similar one with the IPL as well, with what they've done for cricket that had some background, some foundation to it. I think for me, the thing that makes me question the validity, that's easy for me to say, of this competition is at the moment it's only rugby league players that appear to be associated with this. I've not, there's talk of a list of a number of rugby union players, but if you look at the scour the internet in terms of rumours in England, in France, South Africa, there's no names linked there. Seibs, you've obviously been a part of the rugby union setup. Is this a solution to the problem that is club rugby at the moment?
Well, I think everywhere else in the world, rugby union, particularly in the Northern Hemisphere, is thriving pretty well. I mean, you look at the French competition, it's privately owned, very well funded through television money, etc., big crowds. The English Premiership took a little bit of a hit a few years ago, but what's happened since then is centralised contracts. So just after I left England Rugby, the top 25 players get further money, similar to the Australian cricket side. They ring fence some players. And you're right, like I've, obviously, having worked really closely with a lot of the British and Irish Lions players and England players, I haven't seen any of their names attached to this. The other thing I've seen is that the 8 biggest rugby union playing nations, their governing bodies have essentially said that they won't pick players for international level from R360. So that's probably, if you're a rugby player and you love rugby union, then you can't represent.
Particularly Seibs with the World Cup in Australia in 2027. Now, this proposed tournament is due to start in October 26.
That's right.
So all these rugby boys and, Europeans and the Wallabies and the All Blacks, they're going to be very reluctant to miss a World Cup, even if there's a massive earn there for them.
Look, it's probably not appealing for them with the World Cup so close. And if you've been in, the system I worked in, the England rugby system, if you've been in that system, you want to go and represent your country at a World Cup. Maybe the older players who have finished their international careers, that they might be interested in that. But I haven't heard of any rugby union player that's actually been linked to this competition.
I've not heard of any, but then there has been a number of English rugby union internationals that have gone and played their trade in France and then basically given up their national jersey. Same with Australia. So I know the prestige of playing in a World Cup, but heads have turned for money before by playing in an overseas competition, which this would be not too dissimilar. So that for me is probably a concern, because we love the idea of representing our nations, but on the same token, money has spoken before.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like it will turn some players' heads. But again, Matt alluded to this. Like rugby union is not for every rugby league player. Like you have to have look. There's some sameness about the games, but there's a lot of differences. And one of the things, like if you're an outside back, like you can see it with Joseph Sully at the moment. Like in rugby league, he'd have about 20 to 22 touches in a game.
Yeah,
right.
Receives.
Touches in a game. Right. If you look at the moment, if you have a look at how many times he touches the ball, like it's less than 10 every game. Yeah, so that so from an enjoyment point of view, from a skill set point of view, it's not suited to everybody. But as you said, like financially, the money may turn some heads. Like Buzz, you were around during the Super League era. I think I was a young guy at playing lower grades in the Brisbane Broncos at the time. But like you knew who was funding, the Super League, and then you knew who was funding the ARL. And
you knew what it was all about. It was all about cable television, the launch of Optus, the launch of Foxtel, and they both wanted product. Where with this R360, we still don't know how it's going to be televised, who's going to televise it, what networks are going to be interested in it, who is going to provide the money. And it must be outrageous money, is what you said. If Pappenhausen and Zach Lomax has given up 3 times $700,000 a year, 2.1 million to walk. So it must be extraordinary money. But there is no detail. Absolutely no detail.
Publicly, there's no detail.
Yeah,
but you're the best journalist in the world here. You'd find
that's up to debate.
Have you asked that question of the agents?
I've spoken to the agents, but look, I think the agents are reluctant to be upfront with the media right now because their jobs are at risk. You look at Clinton Shifkovsky, for example, who works with Steve Gillis. He manages Zach Lomax, and he also manages Ryan Pappenhausen. Now, 10-year ban threat, and I've spoken to Clinton. He said from the moment Peter V'landys came out and made that statement, he's pulled himself away from all talks with the breakaway movement. And I guess he's hoping that the NRL threat and punishment won't be retrospective for something he might have done previously.
So who would have done the Pappenhausen and Lomax deal? Or is that...
Well, Clinton Shifkovsky's their manager, and I presume he's done it some time ago.
I think you could probably extricate yourself from one deal, but the penalties will be imposed if you are...
From that date, the commission put out that statement.
My assumption is, if Clinton's extricated Ryan from the deal at Melbourne, that's one thing. But if a manager was part of engaging in a deal in the new organisation, that would be the trigger point.
And not all managers like it. Like, and I don't want to drop names now, but there's some really good managers out there who are looking after players of the age of your 5'8" plays, Ethan Strange down in Canberra, who insists they're nowhere near ready to step away from rugby league and go and, there's got so much more to do in this sport. And this is even before the bans came into place, to pack up, leave, go overseas at that age, when there's so much more they've got to achieve. So, but they won't give us much information whatsoever on the detail because they don't want to be implicated.
As a player, like the money would be great, but the competitive nature of a first-grade player, how would you feel about playing 8 games a year, 9 games a year?
I'd probably get bored.
That's like when you talk about with no structure or no information about a competition format, or you jump to the conclusion that it's less games, more money, but then the competitive nature of the people we work with day in, day out. Like, could you imagine your best 3 players only playing 10, 11 games a year? Like, I don't know.
And look, I say this truthfully, and it's not an appeal, but if COVID taught me anything, it's the game is nothing without the fans. Like, I want a tribe to play for. Like, I want to play for St. Helens. I want to play for the Dogs. I want to play for the people of St. George Illawarra Dragons. I want to play for my country in England. Like, the idea of playing for, what would be a circuit team like a Ferrari or a McLaren or whatever it may be, and there's no hardcore.
That's not the case in the IPL. In India, they pack stadiums out, and they're playing for nothing.
But the thing is,
you can't tell me who won the IPL last year or the year before.
Well, exactly. But the thing is, though, there, Buzz, the difference with IPL, that those players still get to play for their countries. Yes. So they get that sense of identity, like, I'm playing for this badge, which means something to me. I'm playing for this community. Look at the Bulldogs. The reason that they're have done so well in recent times, in the past 2 to 3 years, 2 seasons, is that they've recognised they're playing for something bigger than themselves. And my, I guess, this is the R360's problem to solve, is who do these players represent? And if
Look,
if they don't get that fix of playing for something, I think you'll see a void in a number of players that money cannot fill.
If R360 becomes a smash hit and, you know, everyone loves it, watches it, particularly as it starts in October, the league's over, the AFL's over, nothing doing with cricket. And it's a flat period in our lives, you know, there's not much for sporting fanatics. Could it coexist with rugby and NRL, whereas your boys go through till October, and then rather than play, maybe it's a threat to international rugby league, but they then go and play 2 months of, I don't know.
The way the game is at the moment, our players are cooked.
Of course they are. Of course they are.
They're talking at the moment about scheduling content. To give them more content would be.
The only thing is we talk about player welfare.
No, I agree.
Your financial welfare would be well and truly looked after.
Particularly, there's been stories that the comp's going to come back to 20 or 19 weeks, you know. And
I will touch on that a little bit later around whether or not it's better to fight or to broker a deal and look at a way that the competitions can coexist, especially if we get to 20 teams and the competition in the NRL is reduced. You mentioned earlier about players being adaptable to be able to play rugby. I've spoken to numerous people. It was Matty Johns actually that put this idea in my head, and then reading the comments of Mike Tyndall around how club rugby needs to change, how it's become archaic almost. And I think there's a feeling amongst the traditionalists of rugby that it needs to stay the same. This is the evolution or the revolution of club rugby to make it more like NRL. Now, if it becomes more like NRL, then it would be there would be a clear pathway for more NRL players to play a product that is more similar to NRL than club rugby as it currently stands. Could you, obviously, Seibs, you've been in and around the game there. Can you see that appetite to change, to be more NRL rugby league like? We've seen many copycat style moves or plays that we see in rugby league. That, you know, the crossfield kick in rugby union, it was raved about. It was like, we just watch a game of NRL.
No, tactically, there's been a lot of ideas that the rugby union, coaches and players have got from the NRL. I know that a lot of the guys like Owen Farrell and George Ford and those types of guys whose dads played rugby league, they would watch all the NRL games, all the State of Origins, etc. But I don't know whether the people in England, I just remember, Twickenham was full house, 82,000, and they played a Northern Hemisphere game, like box kicks, go and spoil the ruck, line out, set piece. And for an Aussie who's from NRL, that's pretty boring, right? Because there's not free-flowing footy. But they would applaud it, and that was how you win games, you know what I mean? So I don't know whether, I get what Mike's saying about, they're trying to jazz the game up. And
appeal to a new fan that maybe doesn't have the attention to watch 80 minutes of...
Well, it's not even 80 minutes, mate. 36 minutes of ball and play is international rugby.
A lot of rugby union experts describe it as we're checkers, they're chess.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't like watching chess.
No, and it's probably a pretty decent way to explain it, because chess is quite difficult, right? And it's a little bit hard to understand. Whereas checkers is a bit more simple, and that's rugby league. And but look, I don't know whether it would appeal to. I coached 16 tests with England rugby. It was a great experience, but I was certainly happy coming back to the game that I love and know really well. But I don't know whether the English people have an appetite for a jazzed up version. Rugby union game up there, because they're quite traditional, England rugby in particular. I'm not sure whether it appeals to the English. It may appeal to other countries, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think that the worry is it goes, the circuit, the documentaries, the human interest stories, the TikTok generation that want to just see highlight reels, and again, changing the game to be more, to manufacture a game that promotes more free-flowing rugby league style football, which I think rugby union could probably do with. You know, when we watch it, and obviously it's funny, different demographics and what appeals. Like, why does rugby league dominate rugby union over here, but nowhere else in the world? Well, I think maybe those people at R360 have recognised that and gone, let's try and again, it was Matty Johns that said they're going to turn it into a comp that looks more like NRL than what it does. It will resemble more of NRL than what it would currently see in club rugby across the planet.
13 aside.
Well, that would create more space, wouldn't it? For it would create more space for the likes of Pappenhausen or Lomax or Walsh.
And if you look at all of our sports, like, you know, kids played on full fields, and then someone said, oh, we should shorten the field and make it smaller and play with a smaller ball, and people lost their minds and said, why would you do that? And that's just the norm now. If you were 10 and you played cricket on a Saturday morning, it was a real ball with a proper pitch. Now when you go down there on a Saturday morning, it's a half pitch and it's a different ball, and that's the norm. You know, so the evolution of our different sports are all heading in that direction, where it all changes into something that's not the traditional model that we always think it is. So,
well, cricket went through it too, didn't they? From Test to one days to T20 and
100.
Yep,
100 innings.
Yeah.
So.
We have our own competition that 2 new sides come in. We've seen, I think Perth Bears announced their first signing today at time of recording. I think one of the Papua New Guinean internationals has confirmed. We have 2 new teams coming into the comp. Is this a concern for those teams and the commission that are going to be in charge of the Perth Bears? It's going to be harder to attract players, or even further inflate the asking price?
Look, Jimmy, I thought it was a problem before R360 came along, in that I'm not convinced we have another 60 players to, because, you know, we want, and you never get it, you just want competitive football sides at every franchise. And to build those clubs from ground zero, and look, the Dolphins, I know they did it, but they were in a rugby league stronghold. They had Wayne Bennett there, who was an obvious magnet for players. Again, I don't think R360's a huge problem at this stage, because I said they've only signed 2 players who the clubs were happy to release. That's all they've done, right? The bigger problem is their depth around our competition for each club to lose 3 top 30 players to fill, or more than that, 4 top 30 players to fill these rosters at the other clubs. That's where they're going to come from. Manly will lose 4, Penrith will lose 4, Storm will lose 4.
I'm going to put Seibs on the spot. Have you got 3 kids in your list at the moment that started training last week, the week before?
Yeah.
Haven't played a first grade game, and you're looking at them already saying that kid could play 20 games this year. Would you have 3 in your list that hit that marker maybe?
Definitely 2. Yeah, definitely 2.
Well, there's 40 of your 60 players.
Yeah, but
across the
Matt,
competition.
that's very, and look, I so respect your judgment on story, because you've been around, you know, in that nursery at Penrith and kids coming through, but you can't judge the Penrith. They're going to be...
No, but Anthony's got 2.
Yeah.
I'd have 3.
But they've had no experience, you're saying?
Well, they're elite young players who are training in our top 30. So,
Yeah, but what you're saying is these elite young players, you know, don't become instant franchise players.
No, and they don't, mate, no.
And you might not be asking them to play 80 minutes every week of the year either. But,
but what I'm saying is you can't fill these new clubs with...
No, but
you would take some of the the 1 to 10 players, and then
everyone,
these players that haven't played would fill.
Everyone shuffles up.
Yeah,
and I just.
So you're confident we got another 60 players? Are you really?
Yep. I just think you come back to pre-season training, and we haven't started yet, but every year you come back and you go, "Wow, who's that kid?" You know, and you go, "Well, that's so and so that played in the flag last year, and he's got 6 weeks pre-season training with the NRL." And you go, "My God, he looks like a first grader." Like, is he a first grader? That's the $1 million question. But every summer you come back and you just think, and we were talking before we started this, and I worked with a fellow years ago who I respect, and one of his favourite sayings is, sometimes when you're losing a player, it's like taking your hand out of a bucket of water. Like, you turn around and the hole fills in and there's someone else doing it, and life goes on, you know.
Having said that, there's clubs like Newcastle and the Titans who just were hopelessly, out of touch with the top sides last year. Hopelessly out of touch.
I disagree there, Buzz. I think
how would you disagree? They were
Titans v Souths.
Pardon?
The Gold Coast Titans played South Sydney at the back end of the year.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a quality game of football. 2 sides.
Yeah, but you're picking out one game, right? And I know the game you're talking about.
They had us beat.
You don't see. I think last year's standard of football and the evenness of the competition was arguably the best it's ever been. I was genuinely entertained by last year's. I can't recall
Titans games.
Absolutely, I can't recall watching that many games where
Newcastle games.
I decided to turn off.
Look, I think we saw some fantastic signs last year with Parramatta and West Tigers.
Well, yeah. The clubs at the outside the A. You're never gonna. I mean, I'll finish this point off. But let's look at the clubs outside the A. Tigers.
Yeah, on the way up.
Para.
Yep.
Dolphins.
Yep.
Cowboys. There's 4 off the top of my head. Souths. All these sides at different stages produce quality football. That's close to 75% of the competition. Show me a league in the world where 75% of the participating clubs are either in the mix of the top 8 or next year look like they're going to be in the mix.
Look, it's a great competition. I'm not bagging the competition, right? And there aren't many gimmies these days. There aren't many games you can just turn up without your boots and it's a tough comp. But you asked me, are there another 60 players available? Matt would know more than I, but from what I've seen, I don't think there are. And R3, I just don't.
Yeah.
This is the best of the bet. This is the marquee sport in this country, right? Every time you turn that to, you've got to watch
What if you did this, Phil? What if you had 17 clubs? Let's say it goes to 20. And over the next broadcast cycle, you reduce every club to a top 25.
Well, that will depend.
You artificially push talent sideways for a 5-year period to build the competition to a 20 team. You still have a relatively large salary cap, so players aren't going to, the players will actually earn more because the pot of money would be distributed between 25 players, not 30.
We talk about welfare too, so to have only 25 players, we're going to have to reduce the competition to 19 rounds.
No, but instead of having it at the top end, instead of having 6 development players that are earning less, have 10.
Dozen, yeah.
So broaden the base, but artificially push talent sideways for a 5-year period until you end up with a 20.
Yeah, I like that. The other thing I thought, Jimmy...
Which 5 players are you going to let go? Like, seriously. I'd love to see Matt when it comes time to let your 5 go.
Well, one of the things I thought about in the past...
We do it every year.
It was like, to your point, Buzz, around the depth and the competition. I thought it might actually impact Super League more. I just know us as a club over the last... I've been back 3 weeks at work, and we've been offered multiple English players to come across to the competition, and obviously they're doing the rounds. You know what I mean? With regards to the managers. So I actually thought that there might be, another influx of English players come out here because certainly we've been offered, a few different players over the last couple of weeks since we've been back. Yeah, so I thought it might impact them.
But I'm thinking to your club, we spoke about the Titans, we spoke about...
Sorry, Manly,
yeah.
another club that I missed out on there. Talking about those 6, there's another club that legit last year,
I just want to say this about Manly, though, that it's taken you some really good recruitment, to repair a few and fix some issues that were there last year.
Yeah.
So you are now in a position where you really can't afford to lose anyone to these rival franchises.
No, that's right.
Not for you to be a proper threat.
No, that's exactly right.
And it's taken a tough off-season to...
Yeah. No, it has.
Who have you brought in? You've had to bring front rowers in from every...
we brought Kobe Hetherington in from the Broncos. We brought Jamal Fogarty in from the Raiders. They're obviously, both their sides were very good last year. We signed David Moala, who's a very good young front rower, but we've actually signed him for 2027 as it stands, but he's only 22. We signed Blake Wilson, who's a really good winger from the Bulldogs, started the year in the wing.
That's what I mean. That was the point I'm making.
In New Zealand. Yeah, so we've got 4 or 5 guys there.
When you say there's enough players and Manly could lose 5 or so-and-so could lose 5, but if Manly lose 5, I get a feeling you're back to where you were last year, which wasn't good enough.
I don't know if it's the same for everyone.
Yeah. But then you're weakening the comp.
But it's complex, isn't it? Expansion is complex.
So you just want even games and not great... That's what you're saying. Well, by saying that, you're happy for everyone to lose 5, so Penrith come back to the field.
I think expansion is complex, and it's never going to be perfect. I don't think at any stage in the NRL's history would say, there's an oversupply of players here.
No.
It would always be seen as any time we've expanded, it's gone, there's not going to be enough players to fulfill that roster.
I reckon when we had a top 25, there were more players going to England.
Yeah.
Than there are today in a top 30.
Even what Siebes was saying about let's get some Poms out. Canberra have been great with Poms, haven't they?
Yeah, that's sounding.
And particularly the club where it was hard for Ricky to attract, regular guys. But we don't want to ruin the UK Super League either.
I agree. Yeah.
It's an interesting argument that because we've got one competition coming after our players, and then we go to another competition to come after quote unquote their players. Yeah. But obviously there is a difference in terms of playing the same sport and one being a rebel competition.
And then they've got the same problem next year, going to 14 teams. So they're looking to where are they finding? Where's York and Toulouse finding their talent from?
Very good point. And that is another conversation for another day with what is going on with the Super League. Just back to R360 and this being a rebel comp. Sonny Bill Williams, when he walked out of his deal and signed for Toulon, broke his contract. Currently, as it stands, Nelson, Pappenhausen, Lomax have all been shake hands, agreed to walk out the door, and maybe there's some financial transfer fees involved with that. I know certainly with the Lomax deal that is the case, and he's not allowed to play for other clubs. And there's a whole list of clauses in that release. But with big money that is allegedly being offered, they'd be more than willing to pay a lawsuit, buy out an individual's contract. Is that where the real threat is in terms of players that we think are going to be NRL players? Maybe a Tommy Trbojevich, for example, at your club, if R360 were to come in and buy out his contract and say, we'll pay your legal fees. Now, I know he has an affiliation with Manly that is arguably stronger than any other. He'd certainly be in that top echelon of players that is connected to a club through all the junior pathways, living in the community.
Yeah, tribal for it.
Yeah. And that
the one thing we're getting detail from player agents, and some of the detail I got was that R360 were not keen to go down the line of legal court, etc., and that it would be, unless you're off contract, right, unless your time's up in rugby league, you have to do what Lomax has done, and do what Pappenhausen's done and do what Nelson's done. Go to your club, obtain a release, and then they'll talk. But they do not. And
they don't want
I'll tell you, Tommy, I don't mind
image.
dropping this. That was Daniel O'Loughlin, and you know the quality players, Daniel Scott.
They don't want that image.
No. Well, you know, it's expensive enough without being on the steps of a court with QCs and KCs, and that's what I'm told. So they're trying to do this with reasonably nice table manners.
What about transfer fees, though? Like, okay, I'll come to you. Okay, we'll give you $3 million for Nathan, Dylan, Isaiah, Brian, whoever, Blaze.
That has a commercial aspect to it and then a football aspect to it. So the commercial side of it, you go, that's interesting. But, you know, the football side of it. My question, and like no one's asking this question, I find it astonishing that the clubs were so quick to release the players.
I said exactly the same thing.
Like, and then
that I can't believe Para allowed him to go.
Yeah, obviously everyone's cap is in a different cycle, and
But
I wouldn't know the Eels' salary cap. You know, maybe the squeeze was on, and looking down the track, you know, they were going to hit a bump in 18 months' time. But yeah,
but they made that decision 12 months ago to bring him in. And
Jimmy, they signed him for $700,000 as a centre. Like Shane Flanagan, he found out he wasn't a centre, and they pushed him out to the wing.
Yeah,
paying $700, in my view, is too much. You guys know better than I do. It's too much for a winger.
But by
so what they decided,
how much though?
And Josh Addo-Carr on one
by 50 grand. Mate, I reckon Power in a position. So what would
I think they'd prefer Kalamatangi from South with that money.
I think they'd have to pay more for Keon to get him over the line.
Yeah, but there's no hope of getting Keon unless they get rid of Zach Lomax.
But I think if you've got one winger on 700, you can manage that. They bought Josh Addo-Carr in, or whatever his fee.
Yeah.
I think you can afford maybe one winger at 700.
Well, why do you think that was so?
As long as the other one's on 250.
Yeah, and you're saying, Matt, there that's maybe 50 grand over value.
75.
Like for 50 grand, like you're going to let him go? Like, and you know what? It's funny what people put position, like the monetary figure people put on positions. He was impacting the result for that football club, whether he's playing in 3, 4, 2 or 5.
I think, you know, we're just talking about a player here. Here's a guy who wasn't happy at St George asked for release. Here's a guy who wasn't happy asked for release, you know. Like, it might come back to, you know, the type of person they want at the football club. Maybe he was, I don't know. I spoke to, while the season was still going, I spoke to Rousey about it. And I was shocked when he said I'd seriously consider allowing him to go. 1 year into a 4-year contract. Now, for a coach to say that shocked me. It really did.
Is this where then? Because I was surprised that the NRL didn't intervene here.
Yeah, well,
you know, we know Mr.
Volandis
is going to make that call to Payne Haas, and for 50 grand, with Zach Lomax in his Origin deals, Australia, very marketable individual. Could the like an NRL HQ, are they not going, Para, why didn't you give us a call?
Yeah, but hold on. This is where we get to, what's Peter Volandis going to say to Payne Haas? What's he going to say? Is he going to offer him something?
Potentially.
But that's not right, Jim.
Why?
Well, okay, I'll tell you why. Because Turbo might get an offer from, he's only on a short-term contract. Is Peter Volandis going to ring him and offer him something? What about the other 15 clubs? What if it happens to Latrell at South? What if it happens to Nathan? Volandis going to spend just ring all these high-profile players, offering
his own team.
Mate, seriously, it's all about balance, right? This comp. It's all about the integrity of the competition. You can't go and offer Payne Haas anything special to stay in rugby league. You can't. You can have a chat to him. And
you don't think it's worth a legitimate endorsement deal?
Brisbane have already got 14 home games with her. You know, Don Ferner blew up in Canberra about Brisbane getting all the favours from the NRL. I think the way to solve it, and I was talking about it just before we came on here, if you're going to make an exception for Payne Haas and give him a lot of money, the NRL, to keep him in the competition, you've got to bring in a marquee player allowance where every club has a Payne Haas type deal, right? So Turbo can go on his at Manly, Nathan can go on his at Penrith. The Sharks, I'm not sure, will whack on it. Nick, whoever, right? But you can't just go one out for Payne. I think it's so unfair on the rest of the clubs.
Yeah,
Brisbane don't need any help, mate. They're already in the biggest commercial. You know, they've got more third parties than anyone else. They're the people, you know, they should be rallying around, not the NRL.
So you're close with Peter V'landers. What is he having that phone call with Payne Haas in Fiji?
Well, I haven't spoken about Payne Haas, right? But he said he was asked to make the phone call. I presume the Broncos rang him and just said, look, would you mind making a call? I don't know what was said in the phone call. But if the NRL start helping Brisbane keep Payne Haas, they've got to start helping every club keep their star players. You can't... Mate, it comes back to the integrity of the comp, as I said.
I'm a bit torn on it. Well, Seibs, you as a coach, if I present the argument of greater good of the game, and for you as well, Matt, greater good of the game, one of your fiercest rivals, the Brisbane Broncos, I'm presenting the argument greater good of the game. We extend ourselves and we use whether it's a central funding like England Rugby have, or we look at ways to keep the best front row, one of the marquee players in the competition, but we're going to have to bend our salary cap rules. Is that something that you could both accept?
I'd accept the marquee allowance. Like if it was one, you know, I think tell me if I'm wrong, the Super League, do they have two marquee?
Yes, they do,
allowances which you can pay anyone. So I feel like that would be more fair.
So you would be afforded that same luxury?
Yeah, you know, so... You know, we'd have two players on a marquee allowance or one player on a marquee allowance. Something like that, I definitely think would be worthwhile to keep our elite players in.
Where we're going to get into trouble is Reece Walsh should make R360, wouldn't he? Look at the eyeballs he'd bring that. Yeah. Is Peter going to ring him and offer him something too? That's what I'm talking about.
The way you do it is you make in 2026 you make Payne your marquee, and then in 2027 you make Reece. 2028 you make...
Yeah, but Payne might want it for 1 year longer than the 1 year.
Yeah, but that's where you're over. If you have an unlimited marquee player allowance, which is what happens in the Super League currently, the smart clubs overinflate. You get your marquee money for 4 years. You get it for 1 year.
I like the idea. Someone like Stephen Crichton, would he be a great R360 player? Size of his body and strength. And
I don't know the rugby game well enough to make that comment.
I'll say yes.
Yeah, okay. So if he gets a Payne Haas type offer, Peter rings him up and says, "You'd like to endorse you. Every club gets it."
Well, yeah, if every club had a marquee
It'll
player
help
allowance,
Perth.
then it becomes fair.
It'll help Perth.
Yeah,
being
of
able
course
to
it would. Yeah,
it'll help P&G. But
you could just increase the cap.
Well,
that's going to.
But then that's another conversation. The TV deal will happen in the next 6 months, hopefully, and we'll be in a position to pay our footballers a lot more money.
We'll be talking about that on a later episode. You mentioned it briefly before, Buzz, and I am conscious of the time, but is it potentially getting to a stage where we need to come to the table and make an agreement with R360 around their competition start time? It obviously is rumoured to be beginning October the 2nd, so there'd be a slight cross. If we could go to the party and say, hey, delay your comp, those players that want to forego international rugby league, that's fair enough. Maybe it would be we'd give the R360 access to 10 of our best players, or 17, one from each club. They can get the riches of that, and they can go and play on the circuit for 3 months and then they come back to the competition. We
Sure.
can talk about the player welfare issue, but the financial
Yeah,
welfare
but
will be
Jim-
well and truly looked after. And that way we can work together with this competition, which then again would benefit us commercially, because the exposure of the marquee players that are playing in this R360 competition would then draw eyeballs back to the NRL on a regular
It'd be
basis.
a lot easier question to answer in a few years' time when we've got 20 teams in the competition. We do have 19 rounds, and we're in a position to shorten our season, break for
How are we going to
Origin.
get to 20 teams? You've just said we're not have enough players to get to
Well, I'm just being realistic.
18 and 19.
Because I'm just being realistic. I'm being realistic. I know we
Yeah, we'll
want
get
to
there.
have 10 games. And I think New Zealand should have been the 18th team ahead of Perth. That's just my view. You know, you talk about Australia being the only country where rugby league dominates union. I think it could happen, and you'll think I'm mad because of the All Blacks, but the inroads they're making in New Zealand are just astronomical. But it's a good point. But as Matt said, the current setup of our competition, the welfare of the players won't cope with that scenario.
But then that's on the play. I think you'd find the players would be more than willing to go.
Oh, not with 27 rounds, Jim, and not with Origin, and not with finals.
It's 24 games, not 27.
It's 27 rounds, mate, then a final series.
And that would be, that's why the players would get paid extra to go and enter this competition.
So there's no pre-season training.
Well, that's something that you have to deal with and factor in, like clubs have to factor in their Origin.
So in the current format, Isaiah Yeo played one game short of maximum games in the season. Got picked in the Australian team, went to England. He's done 4 or more NRL pre-seasons, so he's entitled to 9 weeks leave. He'll return from his 9 weeks and he'll just fit in his mandatory minimum 5-week training with 1 week deload to be eligible to play the first trial. So his calendar is 51 weeks long.
Yeah. Well, and you know what? If you're going to play R360 and you're getting paid $3 million post-tax or pre-tax, then that's the price that you pay.
But
and you have to waive that right.
But he's not making that decision. The RLPA is making that decision.
Well, that's where this is where all
and then
parties would
Jimmy,
need to
the
come together.
scrutiny they face, they get hurt in R360, they come back here and they're not available to round 6 and they're busted.
But
mate, it won't work.
Sorry? Wouldn't be happy coach, mate.
Okay, well, the alternative is you potentially lose them. This is a solution.
We can't coexist under the current format of rugby league. We can't.
Under the current format?
No.
Under the current format. See, I think even now, right, if I started a nines tournament or, an investments came into the NRL and said, we want to start a nines tournament, we're going to pump all this money in, you'd soon see players change their attitude to having mandatory time off. Let me tell you, as a player, pre-season, no thank you, time off, bored, give me more action. Like the world's gone mad with welfare and loading. It's like you'd be surprised about what players want to do. We're seeing more and more players extend their careers into their mid-30s. But the game's never been as intense. But we also know that players love it. And there would be a risk of injury, of course. You could argue with R360, it's going to be a holiday anyway.
It's
There's
just
your time
burnout,
off.
Jimmy. It's burnout. The human body can't cope. It is burnout, Jim.
Mate,
Look, I'm not into sports science, but it's obvious burnout.
Why are players playing longer? Why is
are they?
DCE...
Well, I haven't looked at the stat. Well, DCE is a special case, isn't it?
Cameron Smith.
Unbelievable athlete.
Clubs are spending more and more money every year on the performance aspect of their operation compared to 15 years ago.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and
I'd make a case in point, Buzz, that the hardest weeks of my NRL career came in December and January. The hardest weeks, the biggest toll on my body, which was beneficial.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Because you're almost like trying to bulletproof your body.
Serious? You talk the physical punishment, those collisions. I'm shocked to hear this.
Well, depending on what your type of training program. Like we have a high-low program, right? So high day, low day, high day, low day, etc. So it's sort of like that through the week. But like talking to the players, like November, December, January, like it's grueling because you know, the back end of the week, you know, in a game week, you deload. You know, you've got a captain's run or whatever teams want to call it. You know, so there's a bit of a deload. Or some teams now will deload the early part of the week and train 2 days out from a game, which I think might be the Panthers model, right? So, so look, there's more thought and more expense or money put into the performance side of things. But like the players say the pre-seasons are the hardest, but I actually think it sets them up to be robust because if we didn't do pre-seasons like that,
absolutely, yes, you need to.
You play in the middle of the park, like your body's not prepared for the rigours of the game.
Because you've got to get ready for the fact that you're not going to be able to weight train. You're not going to be able to. You've got to be prepared then to get the work done because you know that come June, you've got 10 kilos going. You'd probably outlift us, Buzz, because the shoulders are that knackered. So, but I think it is. If this is a serious threat, a serious competition, it is worthwhile the commission meeting the parties that be and looking if we can come up with a deal. Final question to wrap this up. Do we think R360 will still be around in 2030? Buzz?
How far is that? 5 years? No. I'm saying I just haven't at this stage seen enough evidence to suggest that it's going to be a global, something that works. I don't think so.
Yeah. Not for me. I can't.
2030, it's not
I haven't seen enough detail to.
Yeah, I haven't seen enough detail, so I don't think it will be. Yeah.
What do you think it will, Jim?
I think sport's changing. I think I'm a bit torn. The fact that there's no rugby union players heavily linked with it is bizarre. But the fact that 2 players, granted they've been given releases, shows that there's serious intent from these people. But I'm 50-50, probably leaning more towards no. Great episode, gents.
Cheers,
absolutely outstanding.
Thanks, Jimmy.
Cheers.
Pleasure as always. We'll be back soon with another episode on the Roundtable Series 3.